The greatest battles in life are never fought in boardrooms, marketplaces, or political arenas. They are fought in the silent chambers of the mind, and Napoleon Hill understood this with terrifying clarity. For while most people seek to conquer the world, the true test of greatness is the ability to conquer oneself. And here lies one of the darkest but most empowering lessons in Hill's philosophy. The recognition that the enemy within, the impulsive, undisciplined, comfort-seeking side of human nature, is far more dangerous than any enemy outside. Because no matter how powerful your strategies, how vast your resources, or how brilliant your ideas, if you remain a slave to your own weaknesses, your downfall is inevitable. Hill's repeated emphasis on self-discipline was not mere advice about routines or habits. It was a call to psychological warfare against the part of the self that whispers excuses, that craves comfort, that avoids effort, and that sabotages ambition under the disguise of safety. This is why Hill insisted that self-discipline is the master key to wealth and success, because it is the invisible armor that shields you against procrastination, laziness, distraction, and fear. The dark psychology of success reveals that most failures are not caused by external forces, but by internal betrayals. People lie to themselves, justifying their weaknesses, delaying their responsibilities, surrendering to temporary pleasures while sacrificing permanent greatness, and then blaming fate, luck, or society for the results they themselves created. Hill's writings were polite and optimistic, but beneath the surface, they contain a brutal truth. You are your own jailer, and unless you take control of your impulses, you will remain imprisoned by mediocrity. To conquer the self requires a ruthless honesty that most people avoid. It demands that you look in the mirror and admit where you are wasting your life, where you are surrendering to weakness, and where you are betraying your own potential. This level of self-examination is uncomfortable, even painful, which is why so few attempt it. Yet Hill insisted that success requires a definite purpose backed by self-discipline, because without discipline, even the clearest vision dissolves into fantasy. The psychology of self-conquest is not glamorous. It is filled with small daily battles. Resisting distraction when temptation calls, continuing work when fatigue whispers, saving money when desire urges you to spend, practicing skills when others are entertaining themselves. Each act of discipline is a strike against the enemy within, a declaration that the rational, purposeful self is in command, and the weaker self is no longer allowed to dictate the future. The dark truth is that without these victories, life becomes a slow decay into regret, because every indulgence, every excuse, and every surrender compounds into a destiny of failure. Hill also warned of a subtle enemy that feeds the internal weakness, negative emotions and uncontrolled thoughts. He spoke often of the danger of drifting, the tendency of people to go through life aimlessly, without definite purpose, without control of their thinking, simply reacting to circumstances instead of creating them. Drifting is the silent assassin of dreams, because it does not destroy you suddenly. It erodes you slowly, year after year, until one day you realize you have wasted your potential. Hill revealed in his more controversial work, Outwitting the Devil, that drifting is the primary tool through which fear, doubt, and external forces control humanity. The drifter is easily manipulated, easily distracted, easily enslaved, because he lacks the anchor of purpose and the shield of discipline. The psychology of drifting is the psychology of failure, and to escape it requires vigilance over the mind, a constant awareness of what thoughts are allowed to take root and what emotions are permitted to dominate. Most people guard their money more carefully than their minds. Yet it is the mind that determines wealth or poverty. The dark psychology of success teaches us that your mind is either your greatest ally or your most dangerous enemy, and only through discipline and control can you ensure it serves you instead of sabotaging you. One of Hill's most overlooked lessons is the importance of environment in shaping the self. He observed that people unconsciously adopt the habits, beliefs, and behaviors of those around them. And this is where the war of self-conquest becomes even more complicated, because it is not fought in isolation. It is fought amidst influences, voices, and environments that either strengthen or weaken your resolve. The dark psychology here is simple but chilling. If you surround yourself with weak, fearful, undisciplined people, you will unconsciously absorb their weakness, fear, and lack of discipline, no matter how strong you think you are. This is why Hill stressed the mastermind principle, not merely as collaboration, but as protection, a way of surrounding yourself with individuals whose influence sharpens your discipline instead of dulling it. To master yourself, you must also master your environment, Because environment is the silent sculptor of character. Most people lose the battle against themselves, not because they lack willpower, but because they remain in toxic environments that drain their willpower daily. The conqueror of the self is ruthless in this regard, cutting away influences that weaken, eliminating voices that sow doubt, and deliberately designing surroundings that make discipline easier and weakness harder. Another hidden layer in self-conquest is the transmutation of emotions, a concept Hill returned to repeatedly. He argued that emotions like fear, anger, and even sexual energy could be redirected toward productive ends. On the surface, this sounds abstract, but in truth, it is one of the most powerful tools of dark psychology. Most people allow emotions to control them. They lash out when angry, they freeze when fearful, they indulge when lustful. The successful individual, however, learns to convert these raw impulses into energy for discipline and action. Anger becomes determination, fear becomes alertness, desire becomes creative drive. This is not repression, but redirection, the art of turning shadows into fuel. Hill hinted that some of the greatest achievements in history were born from this practice. Men and women who refused to waste their emotional energy on weakness, instead forging it into power. This is the hidden alchemy of the mind, the ability to take what is dark and make it serve what is light. Yet even deeper lies the recognition that the self is not conquered once, but daily. Discipline is not a permanent state. It is a continuous practice. The mind seeks comfort, the body craves ease, and the world tempts with endless distractions. Hill's hidden lesson was that success requires eternal vigilance, because the moment you relax, the enemy within regains ground. This is why he insisted on definiteness of purpose combined with persistence. Purpose gives direction, persistence ensures continuation, and discipline enforces both. The dark truth is that many who achieve temporary success lose it because they stop waging war on themselves. They become complacent, arrogant, or indulgent, and in doing so, they allow the weaker self to rise again and undo years of progress. True self-mastery is not about reaching a final state of perfection, but about remaining the master of the self every day, every choice, every moment, for as long as you live. Hill's writings also suggest that conquering the self is a prerequisite for influencing others. People may listen to your words, but they follow your example. A leader who lacks discipline cannot inspire discipline. A teacher who avoids responsibility cannot instill responsibility. Influence begins with self-mastery, because people are more sensitive to authenticity than they realize. They may not consciously detect it, but subconsciously they know when a leader is truly in control of himself versus when he is projecting an illusion. The dark psychology here is that hypocrisy destroys influence, while authenticity multiplies it. If you cannot command yourself, you cannot command respect, and without respect, influence collapses. Thus, Hill's hidden wisdom was that the foundation of power over others is first power over self. Perhaps the most sobering truth in Hill's philosophy is that most people will never conquer themselves, not because they cannot, but because they will not. They prefer comfort to discipline, excuses to responsibility, and illusion to truth. They drift through life, blaming external forces while remaining prisoners of their own weakness. Hill's teachings are not meant for such people, for they will never apply them. They are meant for the few who are willing to face the uncomfortable reality that success is not given, not inherited, not handed down by luck, but seized through daily acts of discipline and self-control. The dark psychology of success is not a message of comfort, but of challenge. Either you rule yourself or you are ruled. By impulses, by environment, by fear, or by others who understand what you refuse to learn. In this way, conquering the self becomes the most essential and most difficult step in Napoleon Hill's hidden lessons. It is not glamorous, it is not easy, and it will never be popular, but it is the foundation upon which every other principle of success is built. Without it, desire becomes chaos, influence becomes manipulation, and ambition becomes self-destruction. With it, however, everything else becomes possible, because the individual who masters himself cannot be defeated by circumstance, temptation, or fear. This is the secret Hill left for those willing to look deep. Success is not about conquering the world. It is about conquering the invisible enemy within, and only then can the world itself be conquered.